Okay, picking up where we left off. We're still getting common denominators here. So it did upgrade a little bit because now these denominators have no factors whatsoever in common. So we have a factor of 5, a factor of x, and then x minus 2 is a factor. We have to make sure our least common denominator has got to have all of those. So the least common denominator has to be 5x and then x minus 2. Have to have all three. Okay, so when I'm going to go work with that, this first fraction is missing the x minus 2. So you want to multiply top and bottom by x minus 2. Go ahead and section those off. Okay, when you get to the next fraction, he's missing the 5x. So stack it up. And y'all, I'm hoping y'all remember, you're stacking it up like that because anything over itself is just 1. We're not changing the value, we're just changing what it looks like. Okay, so for the first term, all of this stuff, multiply the top. So 7 times x is 7x, 7 times negative 2 is negative 14. Okay, in the bottom, don't multiply it out, just leave it. Okay, bring down your minus. And then in the top, you're doing 6 times 5x is 30x. All right, and once again, in the bottom, again, don't multiply it out, just leave it there. So hopefully you're seeing it. Okay, now we got it, we forced them to be the same. We got 5x and we got x minus 2. Okay, since it's subtraction, it's just 7x minus 14 minus 30x. Okay, put your like terms together. We didn't have to do anything like distributing because this is just a monomial. That's going to be, let's see here, negative 23x minus 14. And then we got 5x, and that's going to be x minus 7. And kind of interesting, but I don't know, you can't factor the top. There's 23's prime, so there's nothing that goes into 23 and 14. So I know the 7 and the 14 are kind of tempting, but again, they're both attached to other things, so they're not fair game. The x's are tempting. You can't touch it, so you are done right here. So you got to know, I can't touch any of this stuff in the top because it's all glued together because of that minus sign. All right, same thing, least common denominator. You've got to have an x plus 7, and you also have to have an x. So go manipulate the circumstance. But some of y'all were changing the bottoms, but you weren't changing the tops. So you've got to remember to stack it. He needs the x both places. This guy needs the x plus 7 both places. Okay, so distribute over here. That'd be x squared plus 8x. And then just going to let these sit side by side. Bring down your minus. Now, oh my, so I'm going to write down the bottom. We got to multiply that binomial out. So, or these two binomials. I got to do x times x, x squared, x times 7, 7x. Then I got to do negative 2 times x, and then I got to do negative 2 times 7 with 14. Okay. So our denominators, yep, they're good. But watch out. You got a minus sign, and it's preceding not just a binomial, but a trinomial. So you got to go in there and you got to change all those signs. So the front is all good. Nothing's hurting the left side. But everything following this negative, the signs have to change. And I said trinomial. It's a trinomial when we put our terms together. But if we distribute now, we actually have 4 of them. So that's a 7, and I think that's a weird looking 2, and that's a 14. Okay, so put your like terms together. Ooh, look at that. Your x squares, they cancel out. Let me get this to change. So we don't have any of those. We have an 8 minus 7, that gives me 1, plus 2 is 3x, and then I got my 14 with it. Then I've got x and x plus 7. So you cannot factor anything out of 3x plus 14. That is prime. You can't do anything with it. So resist the temptation to do anything with the 7 and 14. They're glued to other terms there. So you're stuck. You can only reduce when it's multiplied. Okay, upgrade. You've got to factor the denominators before you get started. Okay, so on this one right here, take that 5 out, and that leaves me x plus 4. So that's nice, because when you're looking at it, we already have part of it matching. This one right here, he has an extra 5, so we just need to take this one and adjust him and say, okay, everybody in here needs to be multiplied times 5. So you don't even have to change the first fraction. The first fraction is just fine. just going to leave them with them factored out. There's your minus. Now over here, when you multiply, you got 2 times 5 is 10, and then you got 5, and then x plus 4. Okay, our denominators are the same. So in the top, it's just going to be, it's only one number, so there's no distributing going on. 16 minus 10, so that would be 6 in the top, and 5 times x plus 4 in the bottom. Can't reduce because the 4 is attached to the x with a plus sign. You're stuck. Okay, Lord have mercy, there's a lot of these. Okay, that looks interesting because I'm seeing the same terms and I'm seeing them swapped around a minus sign. Now, this is what I told y'all guys earlier in one of the other ones. You can force those things to be the same. You just have to factor out a negative. So leave the one that looks normal, and most people say that he looks normal. So on this weirdo, come over here, and if you take out a negative, that means that the sign's reversed. So if I take a negative out of a positive 8, he becomes a negative 8. If I take a negative out of a negative 3x, he becomes a positive 3x. So that gives me a perfect match. And what you can do is you can take this negative right here and this negative right here, put them together, and 2 negatives make a positive. So what I really have is 5 over 3x minus 8 plus 4 over 3x minus 8. Oops, I said minus and wrote plus. So you may have to go back and listen to that again because you want to factor out the negative to spin it around, and then the 2 negatives make positive. Basically, it's whatever this sign is, it's going to change when you take that negative out. So if it was negative to start with, it's going to go positive. If it was positive, it's going to turn into a negative. So you've already got a common denominator. You don't have to do anything else. 5 plus 4 is 9. You're stuck. You don't have access to that 3, so don't even try it. It's stuck in that binomial right there. All right. Obviously, there's some factoring to be done. So if we go in and factor, I've got to have 3x, I've got to have an x. And I need 2 numbers that multiply to 6 so that my middle terms will add to 11. So I'm going to put the 3 here because I'm thinking that's a 9. I'm going to put the 2 there, so that's a 2. So 9 and 2 make 11. Yep. Signs are the same, both negative. So that one's done. All right, I need a 3x and I need x because, 3 is prime. We need to subtract to 10, so we got to make one of these things bigger than 10. Okay, 8, I'm going to use 2 and 4, so let's purposely put the 4 with the 3. We're bigger than 10. If you take 2 off, yep, we're down to 10. But the big one needs, the signs are different, the big one needs to be plus, so 12 needs to be plus. All right, so now that you got them factored, go back and take a look. Do we have any duplicates? Yes, we do. So they both have this. This guy has an x minus 3, he has an x plus 4. It's like you're swapping out. So on this first fraction, you want to give him what he's missing. He's missing the x plus 4. But make sure you do it top and bottom. All right, on this guy, he's missing the x minus 3. That way they all have the same thing. So over on the first guy, you're just going to put that x plus 4 up top because 1 times it's just the same thing. Now in the bottom, please, Lord, don't multiply all that crap out. You're just going to have all 3 of these things together. And I tell you what, since they're going to be common denominators anyway, I just want to write that once. What we're going to get here is we're going to get 2 times this. So it's plus 2 times x minus 3. So I've got x plus 4 from the first fraction, and then I got 2x minus, okay, that's going to be 6. And as irritating as it might be, you're supposed to copy that denominator, so don't start ditching it. Okay, so that's going to give me, what, 3x minus 2? Ooh, do you see what I see? That's fun. Okay, so you always look for it. You want to see if you can factor, but you also want to see if you can reduce, and we have a 3x minus 2 and a 3x minus 2. Now there's nothing in the top, and hopefully y'all remember when there's nothing in the top, you got to put a 1. It's like a placeholder. So I got x plus 4 in the bottom, and I got an x minus 3 in the bottom. Now I'm finished. All right, complex fractions. Now, there were 2 ways that I showed you, but quite honestly, on this review, I'm just going to do the one way that works for them all. I'm not going to do the keep, change, flip because there was so many of you that got confused using 2 methods. We are going to use the common denominator method, and that's it on this review. So if you do the common denominator of your baby fractions, you have a 5 and you have an x minus 5. They do not overlap at all. Yes, there's a 5 in here and there's a 5 there, but remember this one is attached to the x, so that all of that together is one factor. So they're really not connected. What you're going to do is you're going to come over here and you're going to multiply top and bottom by 5 times x minus 5. Okay. And keep in mind, we're trying to reduce these things, but that's over 1 and that's over 1. So that way you can cross things out. If you'll at least do it that way, it'll help you reduce stuff. So whenever I go and I multiply these two things together, hopefully you see that I've got a 5 in the bottom and I've got a 5 in the top. So that's just the way we were multiplying earlier. So you've got 3x from the first side and you've got x minus 5 from over here. And there's nothing in your little bottoms. 1, doesn't matter. So come down here and look at the bottom part. So when we're looking at the bottom part, I've got x minus 5 and I've got x minus 5. You perfectly canceled everything in the bottom of your baby fractions. So I have a 5 and an x. Turn it around and write it like normal. You can keep reducing because there is this is multiplied, that's multiplied, and that's multiplied. So the x is free. This little x right here. It can be reduced. So you got 3 times your binomial over 5. Can't reduce the 5s because this top 5 is stuck. He's glued. All right, same method, but before we get started, I'm hoping you realize that you've got to factor both of those. So that's x to the 5th over, okay, take out a 6. That's going to be x minus 3. All right, and then I got my big old bar. And then if you'll take out a 2, that's x minus 2. Well, that didn't help a whole lot, did it? Okay, but we still want to know our least common denominator. I've got, look at your numbers first. The smallest number that both 6 and 2 go into is 6. So I got to have a 6, but then the top guy has an x minus 3 and the bottom guy has an x minus 2. You got to have it all. As much as I hate to say it, we got to have it all. So we're doing 6, we're doing x minus 3, we're doing x minus 2, all over 1, and then I got to repeat it. Okay, so I'm stacking it up on top of itself. Okay, so all this stuff times all of this. Okay, when you do that, you should find some matches. I'm trying to get a color that'll look different. Okay, just look at the top part. So try to block this off. Just look at the top. When you look there, you've got the 6 here, cancels with that 6. The x minus 3 cancels with that one. So the only thing, see, there's nothing in the bottom now. All you have is x to the 5th, and then we've got this x minus 2. So write that down. Now scoot to the bottom and do it. Okay, I have a 2 goes into 2 one time, 2 goes into 6 3 times. And then x minus 2 cancels with x minus 2. If you're ever doing one of these and your bottom doesn't completely go away, you got a boo-boo. So let's see here, let's clean this up. I got a 3, and I got an x, and then I got an x minus 3. Okay. Hopefully you're seeing your factor that's free. I have 5 x's up here and I have an x down there. So I can take one of these and I can cancel it with one of those, which takes me down to 4. So x to the 4th times x minus 2 over 3 times x minus 3. And you're stuck. That's it. All right, now this is where you have to do this method. My timer's fixing to go off, so I'm just going to end it here and then we'll start back up here in just a second.